You're neatly to the next bit, actually. I was going to ask about, just in addition about that, the story there in terms of how that relationship's broken down with the local authority. It sounds, I was going to ask whether you feel that's replicated around, but it seems as though that survey's kind of have touched on the answer to that question. And perhaps there's a role there for Ofsted or DFE or a Children's Commissioner in terms of an independent oversight of that relationship. But you talk about the representative elements of the forums. I'm wondering how you ensure that your Parent Care Forum is genuinely representative. We've heard from the previous panel and in other discussions about, particularly about perhaps less engaged or less articulate parents, and how you ensure that they are equally able to access the support as everybody else. I wonder where you draw on parents and how they access the forum.
It really varies based upon each forum, because again, what works in Tower Hamlets doesn't work in Norfolk. There are different issues in different communities. But parent care forums, try to access the local community through, the best way of learning what's going on is actually meeting people and talking to them. So there's lots and lots of conversations with parents that parent care forums organise, from coffee mornings to lectures to, and we try and listen to what people are saying face to face. Then there's also things like surveys. There's also things like social media. The SEND community is very active on social media, but the point is there around, there are hard to reach communities, there are seldom heard groups, and they're the same groups across society, and disabled children are no different. What parent care reforms have done recently is there's been recent webinars about how to reach seldom heard groups. There's been some work done by Contact in supporting how to reach seldom heard groups. So I think what I'm saying is, it's the most vulnerable kids are the ones we need to listen to.
So I think that PCFs need to have enough funding so that they can set up programmes that can go into schools, have really good get-togethers, so that they can try and draw parents in, and giving an opportunity to discuss directly with parents, because quite often a lot of parents that you meet, once they find a PCF, there's quite a few people that are quite broken, and the idea of communicating and trying to solve problems is now, it's almost like the gate is nearly closed. So it's trying to get into places as soon as possible and try and meet people as early on in their journey as possible, so that our impact is greater. But I think it's just having enough funding to be able to set up as many programmes as possible.
Authorities refer people to forums, or?
We had a lot of SENCOs would refer, because we did a lot of work building relationships with SENCOs in the school in the way that Beth's describing. One of the things about building links into the community is, if we set up 4 years ago. I think by the time we closed, we had directly on our newsletter about 750 parents, and we're quite a small local authority area. However, our steering group was comprised of the local charities, so we had a hub and spoke model, so we were reaching out into wider communities. So we had National Autistic Society and a Down syndrome charity, so there was more. But actually, it takes a long time to go out and meet parents. I think maybe we reached maybe a third of the parents that we should have been reaching by the end of 4 years. It takes a long time. And I think there's another point, which is that just the ALA talking to the parent care reform doesn't mean that parent voice is being represented. I don't think, parents, our children, I think you can see, are very heterogeneous. They're not a homogeneous group. They have very different needs. And so I don't think it's realistic to expect a parent care forum to speak on behalf of all parents. I think what we became in Richmond and Kingston, we saw ourselves much more as a conduit. So we would set up opportunities for consultation to happen, and then some of our parents were very clear they didn't want to have anything to do with the PCF, but if we organised a meeting, they were happy to come and have their voices heard. Other parents will never come to a meeting like that. You have to go into the schools or find them through other organisations. So I think you need to be careful. A PCF can never be wholly representative of all the parents in a community, I would say. I think we can do a lot to bring those voices together. I think we can do a lot. But I would hate it to be used as a convenience for local service providers to say, well, we've spoken to the PCF, that's it, we've consulted parents. I think that's
an
not the
interesting
right
point,
way.
and one that I'd not thought about prior to this discussion, about local authorities just being able to say, well, we have a parent care forum and therefore we are consulting, so we're following
Yes.
a different angle. But the final question for me, you talked about different things that go on, so online seminars and meetings, coffee mornings. Is there advice and support nationally or from local authorities about the kind of things and best practice that you should be doing as parent care reforms, or is it so localised that you kind of have to make that up for yourselves?
Yes and no is the short answer. So there is some national guidance which is supplied by the charity that supports parent care reforms is Contact, and they do fantastic work supporting parent care reforms, and it's a thankless task trying to organise 150 community groups up and down the country. But also, I think it's really important that parent care reforms are local, and they set up locally, and they look and feel very different across the country because they reflect their communities. They should reflect their communities.